Shalom and welcome. This episode will cover the question, what is Abraham and the ancient Israelites' Y DNA haplogroup? We will specifically speak from the perspective of the paternal descendants of Abraham, because I'm aware that other lineages and haplogroups could have been among the Israelites, but for this video our main goal is to look for the direct bloodline lineage of Abraham and his descendants. What will be their haplogroup? With that being said, what is a Y DNA haplogroup? A Y chromosome is passed down from father to son. According to livingdna.com, titled "What are haplogroups?" it reads, "The paternal haplogroup relates to your Y chromosome, and since that is a sex-determining chromosome for men, it is passed down from father to son." This is the perfect tool to use when trying to determine paternal lineages. Therefore, if we're looking for the Y DNA of Abraham and his descendants, we have to use haplogroups. Abraham's Y chromosome would have been passed down to his son Isaac, to his grandson Jacob, whose name was changed to Israel, and then the Israelites themselves, who paternally descend from Abraham and will carry his Y DNA haplogroup. With that being said, let's look at the first and one of the best candidates, in my opinion, for Abraham and the Israelites' Y DNA haplogroup. One candidate that Abraham and the Israelites could be is E-M123. One method we can use to determine the haplogroup of Abraham and therefore the Israelites is by looking at the origin of the subclade and the location for the origin of Semites. One subclade of haplogroup E that Abraham could have been is a downstream of E-M123. E-M123 is a downstream of E-Z830, which the Natufians carried. According to the genetic analysis done on 6 Natufian remains from northern Israel, the Natufians carried the Y DNA haplogroup E-Z830, a somewhat upwind clade of E-M123, and therefore ancestral to it. The Natufians were one of the first settled peoples in the world, and may have contributed to the domestication of certain crops and thus the advent of agriculture. The discovery of E-Z830 without other clades suggests an indigenous presence in Canaan and Israel that predates all other clades, which are not known to have existed in the region at that time, 10,000 years before present. E-M123 is thought to have a TMRCA, the most common recent ancestor, about 18,000 years ago. 8,000 years before the Natufians, possibly ancestral remains are from. Haplogroup E1b1b12 have been found in 75% of the N-gazelle population, along with 60% of PP&B populations, circa 8,800 through 6,500 BC. According to the book In Hot Pursuit of Language in Prehistory, it reads, "This paper makes an additional inference, since there is archaeological and physical anthropological reason to believe that the Natufians were related to modern Semitic-speaking peoples of the Levant." And according to Cambridge University, it reads, "Given the modern distribution of Semitic languages over the area in question, which belong to the larger Afro-Asiatic family, it seems appropriate to suggest that these first farmers of the Levant and their Mesolithic predecessors, including the Natufian culture, were speaking a Proto-Afro-Asiatic language." It may be that Proto-Semitic continued to develop within the Levant and Syria area, since both Ebelite and Akkadian, early Semitic languages, are there attested early, the former around 2400 BC. So we find the ancestral haplogroup of E-M123, which is E-Z830, among the Natufian remains. Furthermore, E-M123 has a Levantine origin, which is important considering that the Levant is the origin and homeland of Proto-Semites. According to the webpage Eupedia titled E1b1b, it reads, E-M123 originated some 19,000 years ago during the last ice age. Its place of origin is uncertain, but it was probably in the Red Sea region, somewhere between the southern Levant and Ethiopia. Its main subclade, E-M123, most probably emerged in the Levant about 15,000 years ago. Soon afterwards, M34 split into two branches, M84 and Z841, which were probably found in the Fertile Crescent during the Neolithic period. And according to the web page This Week in Palestine, titled Rooted in the Holy Land, it reads, when tests of the deep clade group examine the more recent mutations of your paternal ancestors, the E-M123 clade indicates the Levant and Anatolia as the most recent region of origin, and we have found samples of E-M123 and members of that branch within the Levant as well as in Anatolia around the time of the early Bronze Age and late Chalcolithic. And finding haplogroup E in the Levant is important because Semites will expand from the Levant into Mesopotamia. According to the paper titled Bayesian Phylogenetic Analysis of Semitic Languages identifies an early Bronze Age origin of Semitic in the Near East, and it reads, we estimate that Semitic had an early Bronze Age origin approximately 5,750 years before present in the Levant, followed by an expansion of Akkadian into Mesopotamia. So as we can see, Semites will expand from the Levant going into Mesopotamia and Arabia, where we find high amounts of haplogroup E. Therefore, we can come to the conclusion that these Proto-Semitic or early Semitic populations would have been carrying E markers as they expanded from the Levant, where there was high amounts of haplogroup E. When it comes to modern populations and ancient populations, E-M123 is found among many Jewish and Arab populations and is a great candidate for an Israelite haplogroup. According to the paper titled A Mosaic of People, the Jewish Story and a Reassessment of the DNA Evidence, and it reads, in fact, the best candidates for possibly E3b Israelite ancestry among Jews is E-M123. This subclade occurs in almost the same proportions, approximately 10 through 12%, among both Ashkenazim and Sephardim. According to Christiani in 2004, E-M123 probably originated in the Middle East, since it is found in a large majority of the population from that area, and then back migrated to Ethiopia. Yet, the fact that both Sephardim and Ashkenazim possess this subclade in similar high frequency supports an Israelite/Middle Eastern origin. And according to the page titled Why DNA Haplogroup E, E1b1b, and E1b1a, it reads, this haplogroup has a long presence in the Near East as well, as demonstrated by its occurrence in ancient remains from the Levant and mummies in Egypt. Today, a significant contingent of Ashkenazi, 20%, and Sephardi, 30%, Jews belong to a specific sub-haplogroup of E-M215, defined by the mutation E-M123, supporting this as a major founding lineage of the Jewish people. And according to the paper titled Reconstruction of Patrilineages and Matrilineages of Samaritans and Other Israeli Populations from Y chromosome and mitochondrial DNA Sequences Variation, it reads, haplogroup E3b3, defined by M123, was present at 5 to 20% in Ethiopian, Ashkenazi, Libyan, and Yemenite Jews and in Palestinians. Arabian populations also carry E-M123 as well, in parts of Yemen especially, as high as 25 to 50%. E-M123 is best known for its major subclade E-M34, which dominates this clade. However, earlier studies did not test for E-M34. Looking beyond its geographical patterns, E-M123 is also quite common in many Semitic-speaking communities, including among Ashkenazi and Sephardic Jews, accounting for over 10% to all male lines. But more importantly, looking at the chart and the map, we see that Yemenites can carry up to 25% to 50% of haplogroup E, specifically E-M123 within E-M34. If you look on yful.com and type in E-M123, you can find it among Mediterranean populations, but highest in the Arabian Peninsula among Arab populations, as well as throughout the Middle East and even in parts of Africa. If you type in Y heat map, you'll also see the exact same thing. Distributions of E-M123 throughout the Mediterranean, but highest in the Middle East, specifically the Arabian Peninsula and Israel and other parts of the Near East. Also, if you type in S&P tracker E-M123, you'll see an even split of E-M123 within the Middle East, highest in the Arabian Peninsula, but also throughout the Mediterranean and Europe and parts of Africa. And the split seems to occur within the Levant, with groups going south into the Middle East and groups going north into the Mediterranean. With all of that being said, Abraham and the Israelites could be a downstream of E-M123.